for the brand building strategies, we were working on, like, let's say right now KSC is happening, right? Hodal Karapati, which is in Marathi, right? So for that as well, for the brand building strategies, we are basically hosting the contest in our platform itself, right? So for that as well, we need to support all the APIs. So the recent was I worked on that particular part, but apart from that, basically that is something which we have to do apart from the daily work, right? So I work on different services which are basically supporting different parts of the application, right? Let's say you have product service, catalog service, right? Based upon the requirements, I work on different microservices which they have already in place. So the primary language, primary framework we are using is Springboot for that, and basically it's a Java framework. So
Okay.
yeah, it can be different, totally, like depends upon the requirement. Sometimes you have to work on Python as well, right? Just to basically, let's say you have a small automation in place which you have to do, then you will work on the Python as well. Basically it depends upon you how you want to work. But
So
I
in
usually work on Python.
microservices, how much experience you have?
I've been working like 2.5 years now in the microservices. Before Lenscart as well, there was an application which we are working on. But before that, there was like no such thing as microservices for us in NCR Corporation for around 2 years. So I will say 2 years for microservices.
Okay. Do you know security, authentication, authorization,
Yeah.
messaging?
Mhm.
Okay. How you handle the messaging between the microservice?
So there are two parts of it, right? The first thing is, let's say you have an order service, right? And you have a checkout service in place, right? So let's say the checkout service wants to have some kind of a details of the order service from which is basically like exposed from the order service, right? So that first way will be directly calling the order service from the catalog service, right? Sorry, the checkout service. So we will use REST templates and all that stuff for directly calling the order service. But let's say there's something like another service which we want to basically notify particular, because see, let's say your checkout is happening, right? So after that you have once you check out, then you have a tracking system in place, right? So you have to like you have to notify that particular team as well, right? So this particular order which has to be tracked out after this particular thing is happening, right? So for that we use Kafka here. So what we do, we basically have different topics for different let's say responsibilities, right? So we have some tracking. Let's say we have a topic T1 which basically conveys, basically what we will do once the checkout is complete, we will basically push that particular event for this particular topic, and there are some services which are listening to those particular topics, and then on those particular services it will be handled. So without blocking that particular request which is checkout, it will behind the scenes the Kafka will do all those things for us. We will be basically pushing our events to Kafka, and all the servers which are consuming those particular events or the topics, those will handle all the uh, like implementation part for those particular
So
events.
how many topics between the publisher and subscriber? How many brokers do you have it?
Right now, we have seven. We are basically what we are doing. We are doing in a 7 partitions, right? But although, see, these kind of things has to be built on from the scratch, right? If you want to get deep into it, right? But when I joined Lenscart, these the kind of things was already kind of a setup already, right? So we just have to. They have already a utility service which basically just gives you a utility method to just push something into a Kafka.
But
You have
you
to just
should know, right? So if
right,
the
right.
broker got broken, how you
Mhm.
handle it this?
So what happens is now, see, Kafka is already a fault tolerance, right? Let's say we have 7 partitions are working, right? So let's say one partition gets broken, but it will basically whatever the data or whatever the events which you have pushed to that particular partition, right? It will be first of all, the partition will be removed from that particular, you can say, the cluster, right? So what happens is no other events will be pushed to that particular Kafka, that particular partition only. Then from that particular partition, whatever data it was holding, it will be basically directed to all other partitions, right? So that way, it will basically you never lose any data, and kind of until unless meanwhile you will basically work on bringing up that particular partition of for the particular Kafka topic, and sorry, for the particular Kafka, and then that's the way, I guess,
So
I can
how
answer
you
this
know
one.
this? Message got failed is no more recover. How you handle?
Sorry, message.
Yeah, see, the message got
Hmm.
lost, right? If you send 1,000 messages, 1,000 messages not received by all subscriber, right? Right. How you can reclaim the failure messages?
See, as far as I know, the basically all the events which you send to any particular Kafka partition, right? It gets stored in the physical memory only, right? So even if your one partition is getting down, that particular data will be all the broker will already know, right? This particular partition has been down, and that particular partition's physical memory, it will have access to the physical memory, right? So that you can basically directly kind of get data from that particular partitions. And after that, it will be pushed to that particular partition, right? So anything which is consuming that particular topic, that will get the data.
You know, retry mechanism in Kafka?
Which mechanism?
Retry.
Retry.
Yeah,
Retry is the something, right, which broker does now. Whenever your C tries to
correct,
check
correct.
whether this particular partition is so let's say the partition got failed, right? So it tries to recheck whether this particular partition is coming up or not.
Yeah, have you know this
And
retry mechanism?
I know, yeah, this particular thing, I know.
Okay.
How internally it works, I don't know that in deep, but yeah, that is something that a broker do.
Okay, what is zookeeper?
Zookeeper,
You heard about the zookeeper?
yeah, this is part of the Kafka only, right? So
Okay. What is zookeeper?
the Zookeeper is the only broker I guess the Kafka is using internally, right? Not
Okay.
sure about it.
So, how many topics you created?
I have not created them by myself only because whenever I need to have a new topic in place, I just like asked our team to create one topic for us because they already handle it entirely in Lenskart. But once they created, we just try to send the data in that particular topic and we consume or we write a consumer to consume that particular topic.
Okay, what is your roles and responsibilities?
See, basically changing anything which needs to be done on the services part.
Yeah.
Let's just for an example, right? So let's say right now Lenskart is focusing on basically giving like presenting its application as a fashion brand as well, right? So their entire UI and the PDP pages, first pages, all those getting changed, right? So for that as well, first whenever you land an application, right, we call a PDP API, right, which gives you all the details which you have to show on that particular page. So that has to be changed, right? So that part is related to some kind of a service or multiple services, right? So that has to be done by me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in microservices, what are the challenges you faced?
See, first thing first, you have to let's say you had a monolithic application, right? So you have to usually you have to monitor only one application, right? Or one. So but in microservices now you have broken your application into several and services, right? So you have to monitor those and services as well. Then the monitoring part gets difficult because then the other thing is in the monolithic application you was just let's say you have to scale, right? So the load balancing was also kind of, you can say, first thing first, that see if you want to hit any API from that particular monolithic application, you had a certain URL and you were just calling that particular API, right? But in microservices you have a number of services, right? So you cannot have a number of URLs configured in your UI, right? So you work with the API gateway, and API gateway does all those things for you, right? So that has to be done in a microservice part, which is also can be like difficult sometimes, right? Then another thing is there's a, let's say you have a monolithic, you are just calling an API, right? So it gives you five like response in 500 milliseconds. But now you have different APIs. So let's say your order service calling a product service internally, and the product service calling some other service, right? So there is a gap. There's, let's say you're basically hopping from one service to other service, right? So the response time will be a slightly higher than the usual one. And then the other thing will be other than that, the deployment is also very easy, but deployment gets easy because you have certain parts. The logging will be also difficult, right? So you have to kind of set up some like a structure, right? So that you can basically track all those applications, or you can debug easily all those applications, right? So that is also gets difficult in the microservices.
What is circuit dependency?
The dependency is circular.
Yeah.
So let's say you have certain service, right? With that service, you have auto-wired a certain service in that particular controller, let's say, right? And in that particular service also, you are auto-wiring another service, which also auto-wires that same service, right? So basically, when you have a kind of dependency for another service, and that particular service also meets that particular service as a dependency. So that will basically confuses the Spring, right? And that is also, we say that it is a circular dependency, and you will get an error when you compile that particular, or you build a particular application. It gives you error like circular dependency exists.
Okay. So how do you scale up, scale down the microservice?
Right now, here we are using Dockerized Kubernetes for that, right? So we are basically using Docker and then Kubernetes to basically scale and scale down all the services, right? And in order to manage them, we are using Console as a config, our service discovery tool. So that way we basically scale and scale up our application using Kubernetes and Console. And we are doing vertical scaling, not the horizontal scaling, sorry, not the vertical scaling.
What is horizontal and vertical scaling?
In the horizontal scaling, we basically add different, like let's say we want some more, we want to scale, so we will add multiple systems into the place. But in the vertical scaling, we are just increasing the RAM of the same, or the physical space of the same machine, right? So that is not being done. We are using, basically whenever we have to scale, we just procure some new machines.
Okay, so how the microservice got failed between one microservice to another microservices, right? So A is communicate B, B is communicate C, right? Hello, you are in mute.
So maybe my VPN got disconnected. So I guess I got disconnected.
Okay, see, my condition is I have how many microservices you have it?
Mm-hmm.
How many you have it? How many microservices you have it?
For the particular part, I would say around 8 to 10, I guess. But just by my team only, not sure about the other teams.
What if service got failed between one to another microservice?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how do you handle?
You're saying, let's say you have, just for example, you have order service and you're calling product service from that particular service, right? And that particular product service
Yeah, yeah,
has certain instances got failed, right? So that is
yeah, correct.
the part of service discovery, right? uh, let's say that service discovery also does now. Let's say you have 10 instances, right? And certain instance got basically failed, so that particular whenever you are basically your API gateway is trying to fetch, okay, this particular service, we want the product API or the product service URL, right? So that will never give me that particular instances URL in between, right? So you will never have that particular, basically the failed instance will be removed from the console will check, okay, whether this particular service is coming up or not, but behind the scenes, it will never give you that whenever you want to get all the up environments for that, or the healthy environments for the particular service, it will never give you the IP addresses for those particular services, which are all
But I
the
want to
versions.
see the all microservice at once, right? I want to see all microservice at one place. How you do that?
You want to
See all microservices as a dashboard. Dashboard. Yeah, how you handle?
I'm not getting you. See in the particular
See,
dashboard, now you are calling other the services, right? Order service as well
correct,
as
correct, exactly.
you are saying
How do
that.
you handle? Correct.
See, we have API gateway in place now. We don't have to, let's say we want to call order service as well, product service as well, right? And we only the thing is which we need is the URL to call those particular services, right? So we will have a API gateway in between, right? So we will always call through API gateway only, and this is responsible for the API gateway to just give you or just route you to the correct instance, or collect basically also work as a load balancer, right? So correct, you have to basically, the API gateway will give, okay, we will give you API gateway URL for product service and the order service, and then API gateway will route to the correct service, and which instance is failed or not. If there is any failed instance, it will basically ignore that, and it will route you to the correct up instance, and you can call any services you want. And then in order to call them parallel or any kind of thing, you can basically handle those things into your UI part only. You'll call them asynchronously UI, and through the API gateway only, because API gateway will handle all the network related things, like all the authentication part and the authorization part. Authorization part can be handled in the service as well, but the authentication part will be handled by the service, or the any course related things that are handled on the API gateway level only.
Okay, I can understand. Okay, messaging. See, API gateway. How you can handle?
How can we handle what
Yeah,
like
the request and response. Sometimes the routing the data and how we can some large number of data, how we can push it, right?
not sure. See, let's the same thing na? You have in the dashboard, you have, like, you are showing data of 7 services, that's what you're saying now, and you need to get that particular data using the, basically you're calling an API from the API gateway, and that's what you want me to take. Not sure what is the question actually. I'm not able to understand that.
How do you create the API gateway? How you route the data between the one microservice to another microservice?
See, the first thing is we have service discovery, right? See, when you, let's say I have give you a
Which
dashboard
API
API.
gateway you used? Have you used any? What is the API gateway name?
Right now we are using the name, I don't recall it, but see, the thing is, the major normal thing is, right, you need to have let's say the major
So without
reason.
the API gateway, how to track the request? You have to
No,
send the request via API gateway, right?
right. See, I'm telling you the API gateway, but the cannot recall the name, what exactly the API gateway was, right? But the thing is, he need the major reason. Let's say I gave you already a dashboard URL, which goes through the API gateway, right? And in the API gateway itself, what we do, we need 7 APIs data collected on that particular API, and we want to send it to you, right? So first thing first, API gateway should know, okay, which particular service or what is the network URL for the particular service, right? Because those services are basically servers, and we are basically, sometimes we are scaling them up, sometimes we are scaling them down, right? So for that, we use console for the service discovery part, right? So what API gateway will does in behind the scene, it will basically call the console. Basically, console also gives you the HTTP request. You can directly call with the service name, right? So you will try hit the console API with the service name. It will give you all the network addresses and the port numbers for those particular services, right? So from there, it will basically call the 7 different services with the data which I provided by the console, and it's console's responsibility for handling the service discovery and part on the service registry part only. So the console will handle that part for us, and the discovery part, it will give us the API, and the API gateway will just call those particular network through those URLs. It will call different services. It will combine those data for you, and then it will pass it to you in the response. And if you want to basically try to authenticate something at the, you can directly do it at the API gateway level. You don't have to write the logic in 7 different services or n number of services, right? So that's the way I guess it works only. Uh, but not sure if that was the,
Okay, good.
you can see my screen, right?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, the question is one array having 100, 200, 300, 1 lakh, 5 lakh numbers. The output should be print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, you can remove all zeros preceding the number. Hope you got my question right.
Just a second. I remember one, this thing, right?
Yeah, correct.
And what I have to do?
Then like 1 lakh 3, 1 lakh 4, 1 lakh 5, 1 lakh 6, like this. You can remove all zeros preceding the number and succeeding one should be there.
Okay. So I have to print only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
No, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Okay. Left shift. This number, right shift. Okay, what I can do? Let's try once. I don't record it. First, I need to. I can let's see. Oops. this number that I can do, I can convert it to a string representation. String. The number has also right shift property. I can try numbers of I. Whether to right shift. That's something I don't remember. Right shift. One thing. That's what the syntax is. Not sure. What if I right shift? What it prints. Right shift कैसे करते थे? Right shift कैसे करते थे? किक काम करते हैं इसको इग्नोर करते हैं. Let's have that switch roles string representation. What I do for each string. And take a string. str. This would be a simple way, brute force way, I guess, to just solve it, but not Okay, this is the solution. I can do. I can just take it. Actually, this is the way I can do it here right now. Am I audible?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you explain the code?
Yeah. So for this particular thing, what I've done is I'm basically iterating over this particular array, right? And for
Okay.
each number, now I'm converting it to a string so that I could get the caret and I can compare it with the 0 and 1, right? And for each number, I'm checking whether for each particular, let's say it will be a string, right? For each string, I'm doing what if it's not 0, I will just print out the particular character of the number, and then if it's 0, I'm not printing it, and after iterating over each number, I'm just printing a new line as well, just to have this particular kind of output, right? And that's the whole thing right now I'm doing. But there is another way as well, but I'm not cannot recall it right now, like right shifting this particular one, right? But not able to do it right now, the right shifting one.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
simple
no
way should
problem.
be right, just converting it to an array and then right shifting it by one only. So that will, I guess, okay. And, no, that won't be possible, right? We have to left shift it by left shifting it, I guess. That's fine.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can stop sharing.
Okay.
So do you have experience with full stack?
Yeah. So initially, I started only with the Angular and the Jersey framework, right? So
Okay.
I did work on Angular as well.
Okay. React.
React I've been like doing by myself only because in our in organization the React team is totally different. So I do it whenever I have the time, right? So I learn
So
React
Angular,
also.
which version you worked?
8 and above only. And
Okay.
React I've been
Can you
using from
tell me
last year
the
only.
ng components in Angular?
Like
Yeah, ng components.
ng component, like
Means ng. You can tell me the life cycle.
okay, so life cycle looks will be first the constructor will be run, right, and then you have ng on changes which runs on any change into your input, right? Then you have ng on init, and then after ng on init you have ng uh, content ng do check only. Then you have basically for the change direction, right? Then you have ng content view in it, I guess, and then you have ng content view checked, and then you have ng after view checked, and ng after view in it, and then you have ng destroy.
Okay. You know, can you tell me, yeah, do you know how to bootstrapping the Angular components? You know, bootstrap.
Bootstrapping, like the normal flow how Angular bootstraps the application,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so the flow will be first thing first in our index.html, or the main first the main .ts file gets done, right. In that particular main file, you will see that it basically loads you a browser environment, and then it simply loads the app module which we have in our application, right. And then when you go to app particular module, then you will see that in the app module it basically bootstrap the app component, and the basically the selector which we use and in app component is app hyphen I guess root, is the for the app component, right? And then in the app component, you will see you have three things in place. App component will be will in the top level of the class. You will have a add component decorator, and then on the particular decorator, you'll see you have a template which means that what template you have, basically what HTML you have to load for that particular template, and then for same way you have the CSS or style URL as well. And then that, and in the index.html you will see that it's not doing that. You will have the app root decorator, sorry, the app root tag in the body only. So that way it basically injects all the basically the components into your index.html page, and the flow works this way only, right?
Okay. Do you have the experience on HTML, CSS, JavaScript?
Like although we had a entire different member for that, right? You used to basically gives you the HTML for all the Angular development which you have to do, but in a way we always like do the things in the HTML only, right? So I would say I haven't the knowledge on that, but sometimes it like on the CSS and all that stuff, but it too deep. Not the too deep knowledge of the all the attributes and all the things in CSS part, but yeah, like whenever we have to use, we already use in the Angular only, right? So I would say that is the thing only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comes under Java. Which version you are familiar?
Right now we are using Java 8.
So can you tell me Java 8 features?
In Java 8, the best thing which happened was the stream APIs, right? And other than that, you had like you can have default methods in your even default constructors in your interfaces as well. Then you had Lambda expressions and method references as well. And then you have new functional interfaces was included in that particular Java 8 as well. And other than that, optional was introduced in Java 8, not sure, but I guess
Yeah.
optional is also
Okay.
introduced in Java 8
So what
only.
is the purpose using optional?
Basically, optional gives you like, let's say you have an entity in your database, right? You made a call to just get the particular entity from the database, and what happens is if the entity is not present in the database, you will get null as a return, let's say, right? Or even any other case where you basically get the null as a return, right? So what you have to do, you will just try to check whether if this particular thing is object is null, right? So in order to include this particular null references everywhere, right, or just to have a proper type checking into the place, we use optional for that particular scenario, right? So optional gives you like utility methods to check whether this particular optional contains any entity or not, is present or not, right? Which tells you, okay, this particular entity is present in the optional or not. If not, then you can have a Boolean check only, right? So that will, in that way, you will have a proper type checking way to handle null pointers in
So
your code,
okay.
right?
So what is the consumer predicate supplier?
These are all are the functional interfaces which are introduced in Java 8 only, right? So first thing first, they will have only one method in them. Those are the interfaces, right? So they will have only one abstract method in them. So that is the first thing for the functional interfaces, right? Then the consumer is a functional interface which basically takes one argument as a input, but never gives anything in return, right? So it has a void as a return type, right? So for example, you want to log something, right? So you will basically ask for a log, whatever you have to string, whatever you have to log in the particular class, and then basically whatever you have to log, and in return you never return anything, right? So that in that particular case, you can use consumer you want to use, if you want to use, right? Then you have predicate, which basically is a functional interface which takes some argument from you, and then in return it gives you a Boolean output. So let's say you want to filter out all those elements from your particular object which are greater than 10, right? So it will take an element, and you will define, okay, this is the particular condition. Based upon the particular condition, it will return you true or false, right? So that is predicate. Then you have a supplier as well. Supplier does, it never takes you any input. It never takes any input in its method, but it returns you an output or a type of any particular output. So let's say you want to pick random numbers, right? So you can have a supplier in place which basically returns you a random number every time. You don't have to pass any input for the particular thing, right? So in that particular case, you can use supplier or basically an example of using the supplier, right?
So what are the methods is there in supplier predicate?
Supplier has get method, I guess, and predicate has test, and uh, consumer is not returning anything, right? Mm, Not sure. I'm not recalling it right now, but consumer has also one.
Accept method in which
Yeah, consumer, right? Accept method. Yeah, and predicate has the test method, right? And supplier is giving you something. So I guess the get method is make up supplier. Cannot recall them right now.
okay. So do you know SQL queries, right?
Uh, Depends.
Yeah.
I
So
used
what
to
are the
work on Oracle. Sorry.
okay? Tell me.
I was working on Oracle that time, but different. See, the thing was different projects had different databases in place, right? So first I used Oracle and then moved to MySQL. Right now they have MongoDB and Postgres here. So it's been never been like working on a single database, but different databases. So kind of aware of all of them, but not in that much deep. Based upon the requirement, I used to learn and then implement whatever I have to do, right? So in PL SQL, we had to use procedures and all out of things PL SQL directly, right? So at that
So
time, we used to do the PL SQL as
okay,
well.
okay. In Spring Boot, which version you worked?
Spring Boot 4 and above. Right now, they have 4 only, right? So
Okay. So can you tell me what is the difference between starter web and starter parent
starter parent and starter web,
and
right?
starter web? Yeah.
Both gives, so these are the starter parent is the basic configuration which you need to basically run a Spring application, right? Or you can say a Spring Java application. In order to configure that, you need at least the uh, Springboot parent application, right? These two are also a simple Spring projects only, right? Which you can use as a dependency. So what will it will does, and then for the web, let's say you want to have a web application in place. Let's say you have to have a container, and in that container your application is going to run, right? So for that, you need to have this other one, Spring Boot starter web dependency in your project, and based upon that, it will basically try to fetch all the dependencies it needs, and you will have a simple application with all those things done for you.
Okay. Okay. So can you tell me what are the actuators in Spring Boot? Yeah, Spring Boot actuators.
Actuators, actuators, I have heard them, I have used them also, but
Can you tell me what are the metrics you can monitor with using actuator?
not have a knowledge about actuator actually.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
So how do you deploy your application?
We have all the jobs in place. Although, see, in this particular organization, we don't have any access to any servers actually. So entire DevOps team takes care of them. But in order to what we basically do when we have already our changes done, right? We basically push them to GitLab and then we create a tag for them, and we just directly tell the DevOps team, okay, this particular tag has to be deployed on pre-prod, or once we have done testing in the pre-prod, then they will create a RP in Jira tool, and then after all the approvals, though they will be deploying it to production. But basically, they are using two tools actually. First one is probably Jenkins, and the Jenkins has they have configured all this thing into the Jenkins part only, right? So, but the other thing is right now we are using Build Piper as well. Basically they have came up with a new tool in order to configure all these approval things, right, automatically. So for the entire automation part, they are using build pipeline right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it gives
Yeah.
you kind of like as well.
Okay. So one last question. So what are the challenges you faced in your current organization with the technical problems,
Uh,
challenges?
Yeah, so when I started working in Java and Jersey, first I started with Jersey only, right? Because in the internship I got introduced with the Jersey part, right? So I never had to work on Spring at that time. So in Jersey now, you have the annotations there. Let's say you have REST controller in Spring, but in Jersey you had add path annotation, right? So there's two Spring frameworks were similar in a such a way that they have different annotation, but they are doing the same thing, right? So when I switched from Jersey to Spring, I had to just like manage, like I have to see, okay, this particular thing in restaurant basically relates to that particular path, right? So I had to adapt to now Spring Boot, right? So there we had request filters. Now we have interceptors in Spring Boot, right? They had container request filter and response filter, some kind of things to intercept your request, right? Then in Spring Boot we had all the interceptors and filters as well, right? So the major challenge was to switching between those particular annotations, right? I got used to confuse, like I was using query params, but in Spring Boot we have path variables and all those things. So the switching between both of them, it was kind of challenge for me. But yeah, as soon as like I started working on both of them, like I'm majorly working on Spring, right? So now I'm kind of comfortable with all the annotations of the Springs as well, right? So whenever I get to know, okay, this is something new, annotation, I try to get like check whether what exactly this annotation is doing, right? Because there's a lot of annotations Spring provides you, so I cannot remember all of them. So I have to check whether, okay, this particular thing was doing this particular thing. So that is the major challenge I am facing, or I faced during the initial time in Landscape.
Okay. Okay.
The
Yeah,
switching
that's
between
fine.
this, yeah.
Yeah, I conclude my interview. Do you have any question?
I know that you guys are hiring for the full stack developer, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
still,
correct.
what kind of a project do you have? Like, you guys are working on React as well, yeah? Uh,
Yeah, yeah, React and Angular
uh,
as
yeah, I actually started working on React like around from around like 1 year. I'm trying to do whatever I can do apart from my work, right? So I'm pretty comfortable in React as well, but like never worked on a enterprise level application in React. But can do a lot of work in React as well.
yeah,
Not a
yeah.
problem. Like, yeah,
Okay.
just
Thank you. Thank
depends
you.
on the. You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.